This woman should be in jail. Literally, Hillary Clinton should be behind bars. And so should the people who worked for her who did this. This is so blatantly corrupt. She wanted to distract from her email scandal. She cooked up a plan to accuse Trump of being a Russian agent in order to distract from her own.
Hillary Clinton has dedicated decades to building her reputation as a political force capable of shaping history. Yet, when Megyn Kelly confronts her, even the most formidable armor shows cracks. Beyond poking fun at Hillary's missteps, the roast dismantles the larger-than-life image surrounding her. Each forced laugh, every practiced smile, and every self-important remark becomes fodder for humor. Megyn skillfully strips away the shine from the Clinton persona, turning a symbol of authority into a target of comedic critique.
Stole his first term as president. These absolute liars who run around trying to act like they're the protectors of democracy completely ruined it, tried to undermine it at every turn and at the highest levels with lies, with out-and-out lies that were really serious, and changed foreign policy and changed the course of history in this country in Trump's presidency. And there must.
The roast kicks off by highlighting the most striking contradiction: Hillary's relentless pursuit of power paired with her persistent social awkwardness. Megyn treats it like a sharp irony. The woman who aimed to be the nation's most relatable leader never quite mastered the art of connection. Every attempt at sincerity seemed eclipsed, and every effort to charm came across as awkwardly staged humor. As Megyn points out, Hillary's greatest political weakness wasn't her opponents. It was herself, the inability to convince others of her own honesty.
Legitimate scandal. She made up a scandal about Trump being a Russian asset. And they banked on the intel agencies working with her to perpetuate this lie, and it appears they were only too happy to assist. That's what this scandal's about. Pieces of it we knew. New pieces are coming in by the day thanks to these declassifications. And it's downright.
Be sure to hit the bell icon and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. After the 2016 election, Hillary faced the most humiliating moment of her career. Megyn paints the scene with sharp clarity. Despite having the backing of the media, Hollywood stars, billionaires, and even foreign contributors, she lost to Donald Trump, dismissed by many as a political joke. Megyn doesn't hold back. She amplifies the moment. Hillary had faced defeats before, but this one was expected to be hers, and yet she lost by a staggering margin. The roast calls it the greatest political blunder in American history, a massive upheaval that redefined the landscape of politics.
Clinton has a very weird and I think shitty marriage. I don't think she has a husband who's in love with her or faithful to her, and I think I can't really blame him because she seems to have accepted this behavior since the inception of their marriage. And so, past this prologue, you're going to get what you tolerate. You know, what you permit, you promote. She spent all of her daughter's upbringing away. At work, at the law firm.
Megyn takes aim at Hillary's arrogance and her view of the presidency as a guaranteed throne. She didn't run her campaign to connect with voters. She ran it as if the Oval Office were already hers. Her attitude was so bold, "It's my turn" could have served as her unofficial slogan. Megyn flips this notion on its head, reminding everyone that people resist being told what's inevitable. They want to be convinced. Hillary struggled to win anyone over and seemed genuinely shocked when the loyalty she expected never materialized.
Very different ballgame today than it was even 4 years ago, never mind 8 or 10 years ago when she was doing all this. And back to Hillary, you know, the whole, she has a hat she's tweeted herself out wearing, but her emails. She's tried to turn it into this ridiculous joke, like, oh, but the moon landing, like you nutcases who are still railing about this made-up scandal.
The controversies provide a constant stream of material. Megyn carefully walks through the long list, from Whitewater to Benghazi to the private email server, highlighting that many questions were never truly answered. Hillary's reputation stems less from leadership and more from weathering scandal after scandal, not by clearing her name, but by staying in the spotlight of controversy. Megyn underscores the irony. The woman who aimed to be celebrated for shattering glass ceilings may instead be remembered for skillfully dodging every piece of broken glass in her path.
Hillary Clinton decided to drop an op-ed in the New York Times today that's entitled, "How much dumber will this get?" And she uses Signalgate and the messaging by Pete Hegseth and Mike Wallace and JD Vance and Tulsi and others on there as the jumping off point to talk about how
Megyn's critique goes beyond scandals. She calls out Hillary for her inability to handle criticism. Time and again, Hillary shifts the blame to the FBI, the media, misogyny, Russia, even the voters themselves. Megyn points out that this is the ultimate refusal to take responsibility. The humor lands hardest when Megyn highlights that Hillary often blames the very people she promised to serve. Losing support from the working class is one thing. Blaming them for your shortcomings is another entirely. This is far from true leadership. Beneath the humor lies sharp analysis. Hillary's image as a trailblazer is also questioned. Megyn emphasizes that much of Hillary's career was built on Bill Clinton's success. Without his presidency, she might never have gained her foothold. The myth of her independent rise is shattered. She didn't break barriers alone. She walked through doors opened by her husband's power.
And Chelsea Clinton is not a nice person. And I think really is just sort of getting along based on the family name at this point. And so now she's got a daughter who I guess married a rich guy, but is struggling in her own right. Hillary's in a loveless marriage. She probably doesn't have a lot of real friends, just people who are glamours. And so she absolutely does have to write a fifth memoir and go on MSNBC and be told that she's amazing. And
Megyn doesn't ignore the obvious when it comes to Bill. Hillary's steadfast support for him, despite decades of accusations and alleged wrongdoing, earned her a reputation as a champion for women. Megyn exposes the contradiction. The self-proclaimed feminist was accused by multiple women of defending a man who allegedly harmed them. The humor lands without downplaying the seriousness. It suggests Hillary's feminism sometimes served her political ambitions more than her principles. Loyalty to Bill often outweighed ideology. On stage, Hillary's performance turns into another comic misstep. Megyn highlights the awkward gestures, forced laughs, robotic movements, and awkward comedic timing executed with all the charm of a malfunctioning robot. Hillary's attempts to appear warm and relatable instead come across like a parody, reminiscent of a broken Siri trying to deliver jokes. Megyn calls it the perfect metaphor. In front of the cameras, Hillary holds a bright red button with the wrong label, trying to project the poise of a stateswoman. What was meant to be strategy comes across as awkward comedy.
Army, she did need to distract from that email scandal, which was around her neck like an albatross. Trust me, we were covering it every night on the Kelly File at Fox News. She had clearly violated the law. That homebrew server that had been accessed by foreign agents. She compromised national intelligence information. She did things she would never have allowed anybody at the state.
Megyn also targets Hillary's tendency to play the victim. Every setback, controversy, and misstep gets framed as something inflicted upon her. It was never her fault. Megyn turns this into sharp humor, comparing Hillary to a fighter knocked out cold who blames the referee, the crowd, and even the lighting. The joke lands because it reflects what many people already suspect. Hillary never quite lived up to her claims of strength. Megyn doesn't stop there. She highlights the irony of Hillary's stance on wealth and inequality, pointing out the contradictions in a way the audience can't ignore. The roast flows seamlessly, weaving in Hillary's post-election years. Like a ghost trapped in her political purgatory, she has spent years revisiting 2016 instead of stepping aside gracefully. When the same loss keeps resurfacing in books, interviews, and videos, it begins to look less like resilience and more like obsession. Megyn shows clips of herself as a determined, scrappy athlete who keeps going, contrasting it with Hillary's repeated missteps. By exposing these truths, the roast succeeds, the world moves forward, but Hillary Clinton seems unable to do the same.
Hillary Clinton decided to drop an op-ed in the New York Times today that's entitled, "How much dumber will this get?" And she uses Signalgate and the messaging by Pete Hegseth and Mike Wallace and JD Vance and Tulsi and others on there as the jumping off point to talk about how dumb.
Megyn also takes aim at Hillary's relentless attempts to reinvent her public image. From First Lady to Senator, Secretary of State, and presidential candidate, there was always a new Hillary, a fresh slogan, and a revamped appearance. Yet, the public quickly saw through each reinvention. Megyn compares it to a poorly made film that keeps getting remade with a new cast, director, and marketing strategy, only to lose its audience before it even ends. The problem wasn't the packaging, it was the product. By the end of Megyn's roast, Hillary is no longer the unstoppable titan she once presented herself as. Instead, she becomes a victim of her own ambition, a cautionary tale about what happens when entitlement collides with reality. Megyn doesn't just critique Hillary's political stance, she dismantles her myth, her career, and her persona. What remains is a clear lesson. The biggest misconception in politics isn't weakness, but the illusion of inevitability. Megyn ensures the audience witnesses it all, not just laughs at Hillary's flaws, but sees the full story laid bare for everyone to see.
Just weighed in publicly again on why she lost. And just in case you were thinking it was because she didn't go to Wisconsin, you are wrong. It is you, women of America. It is your fault. She now sits down for an interview and decides that the reason she didn't win is American females. That they didn't like that she wasn't perfect.
Megyn doesn't limit her critique to Hillary's political missteps. She examines the contradictions that have defined her public image. Hillary's advocacy for women has long been central to her persona, yet when it suited her ambitions, she often sidelined women in various contexts throughout her career. Megyn highlights this conditional feminism, exposing the hypocrisy with precision. Behind the scenes, Hillary sheds the carefully crafted persona she wears for cameras, revealing the disconnect between image and reality. The humor comes from her inability, even as a seasoned politician, to shake the reputation of being inauthentic. The awkward exchanges, the forced laughs, and the attempts at relatability all feed into Megyn's portrayal. A woman striving to prove her humanity for decades, yet never quite succeeding.
She puts out this tweet, and it's a picture of her, a much younger Hillary, and the caption on the hat reads, "But her emails." And she writes in her tweet, "Bringing this back in light of recent news. Get a limited edition But Her Emails hat and support Onward Together groups working to strengthen our democracy." The nerve of this woman to have committed federal crimes and to have gotten off because James Comey didn't have the spine to bring it. And now seeing her political opponent get a different result and trying to take some sort of "I told you, but my emails, that was never a thing" lap is going.
The irony of Hillary's obsession with power becomes another target for Megyn's humor. Hillary's lifelong ambition to become president ultimately contributed to her downfall, and after decades of building her career, collecting titles, and crafting a legacy, she found that the public simply didn't buy it. Megyn portrays her as a tragic figure, fully qualified, yet lacking the charm to win over voters. A brilliantly designed political product that flopped in the marketplace. Megyn likens Hillary's 2016 campaign to a high-budget film that bombed at the box office. Marketing was everywhere. Critics gave glowing reviews, money poured in, but the audience vanished. The loss wasn't due to a complex conspiracy. It was simple. People didn't embrace what she was offering. Russia, James Comey, the FBI, the media, misogyny, the Electoral College, and misinformation tactics, none of it mattered. The story of her defeat is far shorter than the list of those she blamed.
And that leaves me back to Schellenberger here. This is page 4 of his report. He writes as follows: "The Russian reports," again, that the Dutch spied on, that we got our hands on, "also claimed," and listen to this, I mean, you probably already know this stuff, Glenn, but claimed that Attorney General Loretta Lynch, okay, this is back in 2016, people, remember, Obama's president, Loretta Lynch is his Attorney General, and her DOJ/FBI are investigating the Hillary Clinton email scandal. And also now we learn simultaneously working with the Hillary Clinton campaign to bury that scandal in favor of...
Megyn highlights Hillary's reliance on complex blame shifting as one of her signature political moves, noting that if everyone else is at fault, maybe the problem wasn't really hers. Another humorous point comes from Hillary's attempts to stay relevant in the years after her defeat. Megyn dismisses the idea that Hillary is quietly shaping politics behind the scenes. Her interviews, references to a potential comeback, and claims of readiness to serve resemble a scruffy rock star imagining a cheering crowd in an empty stadium. By the end of Megyn's critique, Hillary no longer comes across as a political powerhouse. The sting lies in the truth Megyn drives home. Hillary's past, her ambition, and her self-proclaimed trailblazer status, the very qualities she saw as strengths, ultimately contributed to her downfall. This goes beyond a roast. It is a thorough dismantling of the narrative Hillary spent decades building.